Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Utility Sports, and we are covering our Week 5 of NFL Predictions and Pick'em, a series on the channel that we continue to do throughout the NFL season, of course. We're nearly towards the first quarter point of the season. It's crazy how fast this year's going by, and we've seen some really good teams play, and we've seen a lot of really bad teams play as well, so it's been a fun mix up to this point of the year. If you guys are new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button and also leave a like on today's video if you do enjoy what you see, and also comment your picks for this week as well. We'd love to hear from you on which teams you're riding with this weekend. So our pick'em records up to this point, someone take a screenshot here. I am only one game back of our NFL wizard here, Austin. He's at 36-25-1, and I'm at 35-26-1. I'm pretty happy to be even in the picture at this point. If you were here last year, you saw Austin dominate from start to finish. No surprise. And I've been going out there with some outrageous picks. And had I picked the Jaguars one last time this past week, maybe I would have been tied. But, you know, you live and you learn. You find yourself down one spot here, and you're pretty happy going into Week 5, where we have the Indianapolis Colts heading into Mile High to take on the Denver Broncos. And one team that's not happy about where they are at this point of the year is Indianapolis. And because of that, Austin, you and I both feel really confident taking the Denver Broncos this week at home. Obviously, Denver hasn't quite looked the part either. Lost to Las Vegas this past week in Week 4. This is a get-right game for them, though. The Colts just haven't been themselves. Jonathan Taylor also left Week 4 with an injury. Does that play any factor into this game for you?
Yeah, I think so. I think barring the health of him, we don't know where he's exactly going to be for that game. But, you know, quick, short turnaround. I don't think that really bodes well for the Colts. That was a big factor here in my decision to go with Denver, especially the fact that they are at home. I do like them. You know, definitely struggled. You know, Javonte Williams very well could be out for that game as well. We don't know the status of him to this point of recording, but regardless, with both running backs out, I think, you know, obviously Indianapolis is a little more reliant on Jonathan Taylor, and I think, you know, Denver can probably survive a little bit better here.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun matchup to watch on Thursday night, but like you can see on the screen, Denver is the favorite here for us. I think just being at home, being less reliant, like Austin had said, on the running back position, I think does favor them as well going into this next week, as long as Melvin Gordon doesn't cough up the football one too many times against Indianapolis. So then going into the Sunday slate, again, there's a lot of really good games this week, including some divisional matchups and ones we're really excited for. And we're going to start in London again. Of course, we had a thrilling game in London this week between New Orleans and Minnesota. And I think this could be another really fun one. Green Bay won an overtime game in Week 4. And they are our favorite here in this game. Just looking at Aaron Rodgers, I think you can rely on him a little bit easier, especially with the injuries the Giants sustained this week. Tyrod Taylor out with an injury, and Daniel Jones obviously got shaken up this past week as well. The Packers are just healthier and probably just better. Even though the Giants have had a really nice season up to this point, I think riding with Green Bay is probably the right decision here, Austin. If the Giants were to win, what would be one thing you're watching for?
I think it all comes up front, you know, how they're controlling the line of scrimmage, because Green Bay is able to hit you with that 1-2 punch. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, those two backs can definitely wear down a defense throughout the course of a day, and that sets up big play action. And looking at that, I think that's kind of, you know, where the Giants need to key in on, is really, you know, making them more so one-dimensional, not allowing them to get to that, you know, killer play action with Aaron Rodgers. I think that's the big factor in this one.
Yeah, through the middle, the Giants are going to have to be really stout and solid consistently throughout that game. Aaron Jones averaging over 7 yards per touch through Week 4 of the NFL season. That's almost unheard of. Had another big Week 4 in his own right, carrying the football. And I think the Packers, just the better team here. And if you're betting for money, I'd pick the Packers here at this spot. Moving into our next game, we have the Detroit Lions and the New England Patriots. Both of these teams lost narrowly this past week. And here's one of our few splits for the week. I'll warn you guys right now, me and Austin are in a lot of consensus on this week. But Austin, you have the Patriots here at home. Foxborough, obviously a tough place to play. I have the Detroit Lions here. Break down why you have New England winning at home.
Yeah, I think that Detroit had a very poor showing defensively against the Seattle Seahawks. That definitely caused some concern for me. Especially, you know, they had played pretty well defensively against the Minnesota Vikings, you know, the week prior, but, you know, this past week against Seattle, they did not look good. The New England Patriots definitely hung in there with the Packers, you know, despite being down to, you know, their third quarterback and Bailey Zappi. I mean, I look at this as a positive game for them, despite the loss in overtime. But overall, they're going to have to get the run game going. Detroit's front seven has definitely got to step up more in this one. But I like the Patriots for the sheer fact that they're at home. Had this been in Detroit, this was going to be a Detroit pick for me.
Right. The Patriots are a really solid team, especially that secondary. They always seem to perform. Had a pick six against Aaron Rodgers. For me, I have the Lions winning here, even though they are on the road. And a big question for me is, what is going to be the status of Mac Jones? How healthy is he? And what does that New England Patriots offense look like? And I think for the Lions to win this game, you need to have a better performance from Jared Goff. And I know people are going to say better. I know he played really well in terms of the amount of points that they put up and everything. But some of those balls need to be out on time, on target. You see Tariq Woolen's interception this past weekend. You can't have mistakes like that against New England because they'll house some of those. And once you get down to New England, you have to play almost perfect to get back into that because of how good they are with game management and, running the football. Ramondre Stevenson, Damian Harris, both of those guys are very reliable. So you have to almost lead from wire to wire in order to pull a game out against New England when you're on the road. And I think if Jared Goff plays mistake-free football, they have a shot at doing that this weekend. Moving into our next matchup, we have the Los Angeles Chargers heading into Cleveland, where the Chargers this past week had a huge lead over the Texans. Saw that dwindle toward the back end, but they closed things out. And Cleveland here at this point, they have been riding the coattails of Jacoby Brissett, who's played very well up to this point, given the circumstances and situation and the expectations placed upon him. Obviously, the one game against the Jets in week 2, probably the one that you'd like to forget about. But Austin, we both have the Chargers here. I think J.C. Jackson and this defense is just a different beast that Jacoby Brissett's not been faced with this year up to this point. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think that the big difference maker is going to be this Chargers offense. I firmly believe that. I think Austin Eckler could have a huge day, but vice versa. I think Nick Chubb's going to have a monster day. Definitely going to. I think he's going to eclipse 100 yards in this one. He's going to have at least one score. Chargers run defense definitely has to improve. They've given up some big runs this year, and I don't really expect that to be different in this one. But I think the Chargers offense, it's got a little bit more firepower with Justin Herbert under center. Him hopefully another week healthier is definitely going to bode well for this team. Despite them being on the road, I definitely think we're pretty confident in this selection.
Right. Tom Telesco has been trying to solve that run defense for seemingly the last 4 years or so with selections like Jerry Tillery, additions of Linval Joseph and the such over the past few years. One thing I know, they cover the pass much better than they do the run. And like you said, I think I trust this offense enough to get the job done here, even on the road. This is going to be a close game. I think, when you look at mine and Austin's pick being consensus here, it's not that this was an easy, obvious pick. It's just we both tended to lean this way slightly in this matchup. Going into our next game, we have the Houston Texans, who've been a little pesky this year, haven't gotten a lot of wins to show it, but they've been tight in some of those games. And the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are at home. And this is a really big, important game. Not something you'd expect to see from a Week 5 Texans-Jaguars matchup. But this game could be something that really helps solidify the division one way or another. If the Jaguars lose, you're looking at maybe an uphill battle. But if they win, they are still in control of their own destiny at that point. And we have the Jaguars winning here at home. What's one key thing you're watching for?
I think ball security for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he was the first player since 1991 to fumble and lose the ball 4 times in a game. Terrible showing from him today. Unexcusable the amount of times he lost the ball despite it raining. But at the end of the day, you have to have ball security in this league. Hopefully there's no rain here because that was utterly disgusting to watch. But first time I believe I've taken Jacksonville this year, and that was very hesitantly. The Texans played, pretty well against the Chargers overall. They had a, big mounting comeback in that second half. However, it didn't, they just came up short. And this might be a different conversation if they pull off that win, but overall, I see Jacksonville narrowly pulling this one out. I'm still one of those people that's, very cautious of how I'm treating this team. Ultimately, they are still Jacksonville. At the end of the day, they're a 2-2 football team that, could very, very well merely squeak by.
Yeah, so a big question I have for you, Austin, for our fantasy viewers here. Dameon Pierce, last 2 weeks, 240 plus rush yards, 2 touchdowns, including in week 4, he had 100% of the Houston Texans carries. Do you think Jacksonville can slow him down? Obviously, they had some troubles against the run game against Philadelphia.
Yeah, Philadelphia had over 200 yards on the ground and absolutely gashed this run defense. I definitely think that Pierce could get the better of this team. However, I don't think it's going to be, quite the difficulties they had defending Miles Sanders, I guess, and Jalen Hurts. Davis Mills is not as much of a threat to run per se, clearly and obviously, than Jalen Hurts. But I think when you're playing straight up, not having to defend the read option, Jacksonville sits a lot better with that. I don't think it's going to be a huge day, but I think Pierce will definitely, have a good fantasy day.
Yeah, definitely still an RB2, I would say, going into this week. And if he continues to play, he has been, maybe even moves up into that low RB1 tier. Looking into the next game, we have the Atlanta Falcons heading into Tampa Bay to take on the Buccaneers. And we're going with the Bucs here. I think this is just an example of better on paper. And that's the team we typically like to bet on a lot of the time, because when you're looking at the roster up and down, I mean, the Buccaneers are just a better team than Atlanta, but Atlanta's played really competitively this year. Of course, blew a couple leads already up to this point, but they've been in games, including a win this past week. Austin, what do the Buccaneers have to do to make sure this one does not get away from them?
I think, honestly, the biggest thing is containing Cordarrelle Patterson. He's been the biggest weapon in that offense. He's been very consistent running the football, a threat to catch the ball out of the backfield. He's a true Swiss Army knife, and even at age 31, this is not something you'd expect to see from a running back. A lot of times they tail off, but when you look at the mileage on his body, it's not nearly as taxing as some of the other guys that have been true running backs their whole career. Reason being, he was a wide receiver, kick returner, used sparingly, if you will. So I think that's why you're seeing a little bit of his longevity at this point in his career. But I think that's the big thing. And the Buccaneers are great against the run. Therefore, I don't really see this being a huge issue.
Yeah, I hope that the Buccaneers go in and just show out. I think this is going to be an important week for them. I think that they need to show signs of life offensively, and I'm hoping to see a real breakout game. Obviously, they've dealt with a ton of injuries this year. Godwin's missed extensive time. Julio Jones has as well. Mike Evans got suspended for an important game. And then you just look at this team, and top to bottom, they just haven't had some of their top weapons. I'm hoping that finally everything can come together for this team and that they can really showcase who I still believe that they are. You have Tom Brady, you have a chance, and I think that they can go in here at home against Atlanta and really take care of business. Moving into our next one, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers heading into Buffalo to take on the Bills, and it just seems like the Bills are not a team you want to play against right now. They got down early in a bad way to Baltimore and ended up coming back in week 4 in dominating fashion, scoring a ton of points, especially in the second half. And Josh Allen just seems like a problem. Pittsburgh's got a lot of defensive playmakers. Obviously no TJ Watt right now, though, Austin. Does that make your pick here pretty easy for Buffalo?
Yeah, and just think with the uncertainty in this, Pittsburgh offense, not being able to run the ball effectively, having found a rhythm in the passing game as well. That's a recipe truly for disaster. Talented players on this offense, there's no denying that, but Pittsburgh is just looking out of sorts offensively. Mike Tomlin's teams are very, very well coached, and that's been documented throughout his entire career. And so you have to figure at some point these wins have got to start to stack a little bit to kind of, go along with his career resume. But right now, I have some major questions about the Steelers, and it was a big concern of mine, this offensive line in the offseason, and that is definitely detrimental to their season if they don't get it figured out.
Right, especially now with the rookie quarterback. We would assume Kenny Pickett's going to take the start here, obviously replace Mitchell Trubisky at halftime in week 4. And Pickett, he looked pretty good in the second half against the New York Jets. Obviously a couple interceptions, but most of those were tipped anyway, so not really on him as much as the stat line would like to say it is. But Buffalo's just, I think, the better team here. It's interesting to watch, too. Deontay Johnson just hasn't been getting the targets the same way. Obviously, we've seen him on some jet sweeps, trying to get him the ball in creative ways. Just hasn't been as easy for him this year based on what we saw last year, where statistically he was phenomenal. And really, when you turned on the film, you saw that as well. This year, a little bit less of that. This is going to be hopefully a big game for him, but Buffalo probably handles this team rather easily. Moving into our next matchup, we have the Miami Dolphins heading into East Rutherford, New Jersey to take on the New York Jets. And despite the Jets, a couple narrow wins this year, 2-2. I'm sure Jets fans are feeling good. I know I am. Zach Wilson looked awesome in the second half. The Dolphins here are just the better team. And my question here is, and I think this is going to be one of the best matchups of the week, actually, in terms of positional battles, because we get two really great wide receivers in Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill, going against cornerbacks who are playing really well this year in DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner. I know Austin's not going to let me forget that I said that. Austin, what's your key takeaway from this game, and how excited are you to watch those wideout cornerback matchups?
Yeah, well, when you got two lockdown corners on two elite wideouts, it's going to make for an awesome matchup to watch. It's really going to come down to war in the trenches. What is this pass rush going to look like from Miami? Are they going to force Zach Wilson into some key mistakes? I think it's very possible. You have to look at the other side of it. If, Teddy Bridgewater being the starter, for the Dolphins. This is a guy that we know what he is. He's not a guy that's going to make a ton of mistakes. So I think that's pretty constant what we should see from him. But Zach Wilson's either going to, explode and have a great game, or it's very possible he's forced into some early mistakes. But I don't really see it being that way. I see, Miami narrowly edging out the Jets. I was very, very close to picking the Jets in this game, but I just couldn't have myself do it.
Right. This is a very important matchup. Again, when you're looking at the divisional race here in the AFC East, the Dolphins need pretty much every single in-division win that they can get. Obviously, they've already beat the Buffalo Bills this year, but a win against the New York Jets would go a long way in bolstering their likelihood of potentially winning the AFC East by the end of the year. This is a must-win game for Miami when you look at the playoff implications. Obviously, the Jets would love to win this one, but they're still in the early phases of their rebuild. If they don't win this one, it's not as, detrimental to that team long term. Miami's trying to really make some noise right now. And if they go in and win, they are solidifying themselves in the thick of things here in that AFC East race. Now looking at the Chicago Bears heading into Minnesota, we have an NFC North matchup here. And had this game happen in Chicago, you could argue that the Bears could maybe make some noise here. But this game is at US Bank Stadium in Minnesota. The Vikings typically play really well there. Of course, week 3 had a phenomenal win over the Lions. Week 1, they destroyed the Green Bay Packers. So they're protecting home field very well up to this point. 2-0 in division at home this season. Austin, no reason for them to not go 3-0, right?
Yeah, I think the Minnesota Vikings, definitely the superior team. I think regardless of where this is played, it should be the Vikings game to take. Justin Fields is just, the offense has struggled mightily. We knew this was going to happen going into it. Some of it falls on Justin Fields, some of it falls on play calling, and some of it's just, for lack of better terms, just, they need to have better players around him. I think that's the beauty in it is, Justin Fields has had some bright moments, even with a very, very poor supporting cast. Decent run game right now, but in terms of the wide receiver position, I have some major question marks moving forward.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a real big thing to watch. Of course, Darnell Mooney came to life a little bit in week 4. We're going to need to see more consistency out of him, especially if this Bears team is going to move the football against the Minnesota Vikings, where you could argue, hey, that secondary is not as strong as it used to be. That's probably where they want to attack, but it's not a great matchup here for the Bears, just looking at how they've moved the ball themselves this year. Tennessee Titans head into Washington to take on the Commanders, and we have another split decision here. Austin's going with the Titans, and for me, I just always feel a little weird taking some of these AFC South teams, unless it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. I just can't really bet on them week in, week out. Obviously, I bet against the Titans in week 4. That didn't pay off for me. But Washington, who's been really pass-reliant this year, obviously did not look great against Dallas. I think at home they can maybe get back on track, which I think is going to be really important for them. Otherwise, their season's basically in the casket already. Just ready to get buried, because at this point they can't really afford to lose any more games early on in the season, especially if they hope to make up ground on Philadelphia, who's played so phenomenally up to this point. Austin, why did the Titans get the job done though?
I just think, looking at Tennessee, there's going to be a stretch where we start to see the consistency. This is definitely not a Titans team that we've seen in the last couple of seasons that have been very, very competitive. They just look a little worse overall, but I think getting Derrick Henry going is going to be a big deal, but also you have to consider Washington's, their front 7 is good. So they very well could bottle them up, and then it's going to come down to Ryan Tannehill having to make some plays. I'm not sure, once again, the health of Treylon Burks. I'm not exactly sure how this game's going to go. The longer I sit and think about it, the worse I feel about the Titans pick. But at the end of the day, I think they very well, could steal a game on the road and, definitely be towards that top of the AFC South.
Yeah, I think you perfectly summed it up. When you're picking an AFC South team, you have to try not to think about it too long, so you get a little sick to your stomach after making that selection. Moving on to the next game here, we have Seattle heading into New Orleans to take on the Saints. And this is a tougher matchup than I think either you or myself would have expected coming into week 5. At the beginning of the year, you look at Seattle's roster and you're just not that impressed with that team, but they have played really hard. And Pete Carroll, this is a testament to how good of a coach he is. Geno Smith has the record for completion percentage through the first 4 games of an NFL season with like a minimum of 125 attempts or something. He's been lights out for them, which I don't think anyone really expected coming into the year. But he ain't right back though, if you guys know what I'm talking about. But we both have the Saints here. I think just the better team on paper. And I think Marshawn Lattimore could have a big impact on this game as well, trying to limit the receiver play from Seattle. Obviously, they've got good wideouts there, helping Geno Smith along in this process. But if Marshawn Lattimore can do what he does when he's at his best, he can limit one of those guys. Now, he didn't do it against Justin Jefferson in England, but it's very possible that he could do that here against Seattle back at home in Louisiana. Austin, what's your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I definitely think that, the reason I take New Orleans here, they're going to get healthy. They missed a lot of key players in the game in England against the Vikings, and they were still very close to winning that game. I think it's a true testament to Dennis Allen's defense, a guy that truly understands his personnel group, what he currently has on roster, and he's got a phenomenal red zone defense, and that's really what kept New Orleans in this game. So I think the same is going to be true here. The Saints are just going to have enough offensively, and this is, once again, a grit and grind game where they win narrowly.
Yeah, I'm very excited for this matchup, and our next one is a pretty good one as well. San Francisco, the 49ers head into Carolina to take on the Panthers, and it's been a little bit of a tumultuous start for Carolina up to this point. Baker Mayfield probably not providing all the wins that the Panthers were hoping for this year, and we both go with San Francisco. Again, I think a case here of, hey, the defensive line is probably going to outplay Carolina's offensive line, and Baker Mayfield's going to have to do a ton of things off script, which he's not terrible at, but when he is performing in that way, he tends to leave the ball out in 50-50 scenarios and is a little bit more turnover prone when we see that. Austin, what would be your over-under number on Baker Mayfield interceptions this week?
Yeah, I think he's probably going to have 2 picks in this game. The only reason I say that is San Francisco is really good at manufacturing pressure without blitz. Obviously Nick Bosa is a big part of that, but their defensive front is good. A lot of different looks that they can throw at you, and I think that's ultimately what's going to lead to the Carolina Panthers' demise. But the whole history of our pick'em suggests we never know when Carolina's actually going to win. I think we're really bad at predicting that, so I wouldn't be surprised if Carolina wins this game, because we can never pinpoint the right week where you're gonna have a random Robbie Anderson 120-yard game.
Right. I feel like the Panthers are probably the hardest team to pick. Them and Arizona are the 2 teams I really struggle with. But yeah, Carolina, they're a weird squad. They can pull games out that you're not expecting. When you bet on them to win, they definitely don't. So again, if you're betting against the Panthers, you're signing yourself up for a weird day on Sunday. Moving into our next game, and like I said, here's Arizona. I'm picking against them like usual. I got the Philadelphia Eagles heading into Arizona and getting the win. This is going to be a lot of fun football to watch here, especially when you consider the fact that you do have 2 very mobile quarterbacks in Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray. There's going to be a lot of offense in this one, probably a little bit of a shootout, but I think that favors Philadelphia. We've just seen them be able to put up so many points this year, and in a hurry. They looked dead in the water early in the beginning of the game against Jacksonville, got down by 14 early, and they stormed back and they scored 20-plus points straight, and it looks like they're almost unstoppable when they are clicking. Austin, does that contribute to your Eagles pick here as well?
Yeah, I think they're going to apply a lot of pressure to Kyler Murray. Once again, Philadelphia's front, they have so many rotational guys that can really get after the quarterback consistently, and we've seen that in that Jacksonville game, forcing a ton of turnovers. I think some of it's even phantom pressure that's created by them with just how often they get there, therefore creates like a phantom pressure for quarterbacks, because they aren't able to truly evaluate how much time they have if they're getting just destroyed all day long. And we've seen that with Carson Wentz. I think that was the greatest example of it. He was feeling pressure that really wasn't even there, therefore leading him into bad decisions, even though the pressure might not truly have been there. So I think Kyler Murray's a guy that's not as affected by something like that because of his, escapability and the ability to climb the pocket. But at the end of the day, I think it's going to be a terrific matchup. It's all going to come down to the quarterback play, I believe, here. But just like Philly's infrastructure overall, I like what they've been doing. But once again, this is probably one of those games that the Cardinals will just steal for no reason.
Right. Philadelphia, this is a testament to Howie Roseman as well. Austin, you and I talked off camera quite a bit before the season started about how good this Eagles team looked and that they could potentially be the best team in the NFC. In fact, that was our picks to be the best team in the NFC throughout the regular season. You liked their schedule. You thought, hey, this roster is really looking filled out well. The A.J. Brown addition was genius. But also, you look at the defense, adding a guy like James Bradbury, very good decision, and it really helps that cornerback play. Bringing in a guy like Jordan Davis to really help out against the run, genius. They've just done such a great job on both sides of the football, and I don't think it's surprising that this team is at the point where they are. They should be considered the favorites in pretty much every single game they go into until they lose, and I think this is nothing different. Arizona's a good team. I think Philadelphia is a great team. Looking at the Dallas Cowboys heading into Los Angeles to take on the Rams at SoFi Stadium. And we got some question marks here. Cooper Rush, he's been playing really awesome. Of course, Jerry Jones a couple weeks ago said, hey, he's open to a quarterback controversy, because if that's the case, that means Cooper Rush has played great. He's played pretty great up to this point. Obviously, I'm sure that's a little tongue-in-cheek. I'm sure there's not actually going to be a QB controversy around Rush and Dak Prescott, Austin. But is it possible here the Cowboys could go on the road and beat the LA Rams?
I do believe it's possible, especially with Cooper Rush at quarterback, which is weird to say. Only reason I kind of bring that up is because he's 4-0 as a starter right now, which is absolutely incredible. It all started last year when he stole I believe it was a Thursday night game or a Monday night game against the Vikings. Whatever it was a primetime game, and that kind of put him on the map. A couple people that have talked about him in the pre-draft process said he was, one of the smartest quarterbacks they've ever evaluated. Very, very comparable to Kellen Moore, who's actually his OC, which is just really ironic. So a lot of great football minds in that quarterback room and within that offense. So at the end of the day, though, I think Aaron Donald's going to be too much for this interior of the Cowboys the Cowboys offensive line to handle. And Cooper Rush does not have that mobility to truly escape that, up the middle pressure that the Rams are going to provide.
Right, top to bottom, the Rams probably just the better team. There's a reason that they won the Super Bowl last year, but hey, you never know. Don't discount Cooper Rush and the Dallas Cowboys at this point. They've been playing really good football the last 3 weeks. Then we look at a Sunday night primetime game here between the Cincinnati Bengals, and they go into Baltimore to take on the AFC North Division rival Baltimore Ravens. And this is going to be a highly heated game. It always is between these AFC North teams. I'm sure that the cornerback wide receiver matchups are going to be a lot of fun to watch, especially since these wideouts going up against Baltimore's great cornerback play. Obviously, Marcus Peters was not happy with how the game ended in week 4, but I think maybe he comes out week 5 with a vengeance. We both have the Ravens winning at home in what I think is going to be a really tough battle, probably a game that's decided by a field goal at the end. Austin, why did you pick the Ravens, and how close is this game going to end up?
Yeah, I think it was very tough to make the selection because Cincinnati, I believe, has figured it out. Haven't given up as many sacks the last 2 games. Definitely have cut that number back. Once again, it's a product of the play calling as well, getting the ball out just quicker. Maybe not looking for as big a chunk plays and having to rely on guys a little bit of, yards after catch. I think that's kind of the big difference maker we've seen to this point, why they've improved. I just think it's tougher for the Cincinnati Bengals to go ahead and cover Lamar Jackson. He's a tough assignment. I mean, putting a spy on him is not enough. He's able to outrun linebackers and corners. It's crazy. He is such a tough player to cover. So I think Baltimore being at home was a big tipping point for me. Had this game once again been in Cincinnati, I'd probably take the Bengals in it.
Yeah, Lamar is such a special athlete. We also saw J.K. Dobbins in week 4 look really good again. Had 2 touchdowns in that game, which was a really good positive sign for Baltimore. And they don't have to travel this week. They're staying right there in Baltimore. Obviously, the tough loss to the Bills, but I think they're going to try and come back this year. They've had 2 really tough losses when you factor in the one to the Bills and the Dolphins this year. This team is really, really good. Their record doesn't indicate how good they are this season. I think that they do take care of this game, although it's going to be in dramatic fashion. And now our Monday night primetime game here. And this was a game I wavered on a little bit more than I think a lot of people would expect. The Las Vegas Raiders go into Arrowhead Stadium to take on the Kansas City Chiefs. And this past week was a real indicator, again, on what kind of special player we're watching. Number 15 for Kansas City, Patrick Mahomes, such a special talent. You guys, even if you don't like the Chiefs, even if you hate the Chiefs even, enjoy what you're watching because he is one of the most special players to ever step on a football field. Austin, how important is Patrick Mahomes here for you picking the Chiefs?
Yeah, I mean, he's everything week in, week out with his ability to, make throws on the run, ability to stay in the pocket, dissect the defense. And the big thing is he's gotten so much smarter over the course of his career. The mental game is catching up with his actual physical attributes, therefore making for one of the most dangerous weapons that this league has ever seen. And I think that, with them being at home on a primetime game against a division rival in the Raiders, once again, the Raiders have stolen some weird games from them over the last couple of seasons when they were clearly the less talented team. Once again, I understand why you'd think about the Raiders a little bit more, just because for whatever reason, the Raiders have been able to pull out those games. But I just think that this should not be an overthink on it. The Chiefs are the better team on paper. They have the better quarterback. They have the better head coach. A lot of the things swing in the balance of the Chiefs.
Right. And ultimately, that's where I went. Again, you don't want to doubt the Chiefs. That's one thing that I've learned over the last 3 or 4 years with Patrick Mahomes quarterback in that team. You want to trust in Mahomes. You want to trust in Andy Reid, and the Chiefs tend to win a ton of games. I don't think it's going to be a different result here, but I do think this is going to be a closer game than I think a lot of people would initially expect, just looking at the records. Vegas at 1-3. Chiefs obviously just been so good this year, even without Tyreek Hill. But again, like you said, Raiders pull out weird games. It's a divisional game. They're going to be very competitive and tight, but ultimately Chiefs, just the better team, like you said, at home, makes it somewhat of a no-brainer, even in a tight matchup. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Hopefully you did really enjoy today's video. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Also subscribe to the channel for more. Again, don't forget to leave your pick'em in the chat. We'd love to see everything that you guys think about week 5 here in the NFL. Thanks again so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the very next Utility Sports video.